Hello, welcome Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today in Unit 28 Globalization, we are continuing our topic different ideas on what constitutes globalization. Some scholars see globalization as essentially a post-industrial society phenomena where communication technologies are the defining feature. Kessel looks at the present global age as essentially a networked society. The sociologist Samuel Kessel has distinguished a network of societies in which a new space of flows exists alongside the old space of places. What Kessel intends to explain is that due to technologically mediated conditions, there will be different types of interaction possible, like the existing interactions within the given society, such as through satellites, internet, telecommunication linkages, and other digital technologies. Kessel's analysis overlooks that treats the process in a segmental manner rather than in a holistic way, its nature and consequences. Invariably, in the segmental approach, analysts have studied financial or capital globalization, telecommunication or media globalization, and cultural globalization as separate developments and then try to view the impact of the one on the other. For instance, financial or capital globalization upon other segments such as the media, communication, or culture. This approach has two weaknesses. First, it fails to help us in comprehending the role of the residual social structure, realities, and their emergent properties, and the way they interact with any one of these three aspects of globalization, be it capital, communication, or culture. Many scholars look at globalization as a process emanating from the West and therefore another form of westernization. They equate globalization with westernization or modernization. This view propounds that globalization is a dynamic process whereby the social structures of modernity are spread the world over, normally destroying pre-existing cultures and local self-determination in the process. Globalization in this sense is sometimes described as an imperialism of McDonald, Hollywood, colonization, MTV generation, and CNN. As Martin aptly comments that globalization is what we in the third world have for several centuries called colonization. Another aspect which has been looked by scholars identifies globalization as deteriorization. Following this interpretation, globalization entails a reconfiguration of geography so that social space is no longer wholly mapped in terms of territorial places, territorial distances, and territorial borders. This usage provides new insight and relatively new conditions whereby globalization can be referred as supra-territorial relation between people. Deterritorialization refers to a far-reaching change in the nature of social space. Further, the proliferation and spread of supra-territorial, or what we can alternatively term as transworld or transborder connections, brings an end to what could be called territorialism. That is a situation where social geography is entirely territorial. Current history has witnessed a proliferation of social connections that are at least partly and often quite substantially detached from a territorial logic of the kind just described. Such phenomena cannot be situated at a fixed territorial location. They operate largely without regard to territorial distance. They substantially bypass territorial borders. The geography of these global conditions cannot be understood in terms of territoriality alone. They also reside in the world as a single place, that is, in a trans-world space. As we can see, there is no agreed upon view as to what exactly constitutes globalization. Globalization literature is rife with different and contesting views. David Harvey has put some of these arguments in three categories, which we will discuss. But before that, think about it. The first is conceptualizing globalization, three tendencies. Three tendencies that have been captured and categorized by David Harvey are as follows. We are adapting it from the way they are presented by Anthony Giddens. The first is skeptic. The skeptics like Hist and Thompson, Boyer and Dredge think that globalization is not a new phenomenon. There have been economic interdependence earlier too. They point out to statistics of world trade in the 19th century and contend that the present global trade differs only in intensity and therefore it is not new. They say that the world economy is not sufficiently integrated to constitute truly global economy. If anything, they argue trade is between three regional groups of countries: Europe, Asia Pacific and North America. The countries of European Union, for example, trade predominantly among themselves. This invalidates the notion of global economy. They argue many skeptics focus on the process of resignation. They also reject the notion that the national governments and states are weakening. According to skeptics, national governments play a key role in their involvement in regulating and coordination economic activity. The second is hyperglobalizers. The hyperglobalizer take an opposing view to that of the skeptics. They feel that globalization is very real and its effect can be felt everywhere. They think that globalization sweeps across, unmindful of borders and territories. A leading thinker belonging to the hyperglobalizers camp, Kanchi Chama, believes that globalization is leading us to a borderless society, a world in which market forces are more powerful than national governments. The hyperglobalizers focus their discussion on the decreasing influence of national governments. They are not only challenged by international market force and big corporations but also by regional and regional institutions such as European Union, World Bank, WTO, etc. These shift, according to Albro, where national governments' decline in influence signals the dawn of a global age. Hyperglobalizers are also the advocates of globalization with a neoliberal ideology with their prescription and focus on its homogenizing nature. The skeptics are mainly the neo-Marxists and radicals who focus on the negative aspects of globalization and also notice the hybridizing culture side of the process. Marxists highlight the hegemonic character of globalization. The next point is transformation list. The transformation list takes a middle position. They see globalization touching a wide spectrum of changes that are witnessing in modern society. According to them, while the global world is transforming, many old patterns continue to exist. They see globalization as an open and dynamic process which does not have any single source of origin or tendencies. In fact, it breaks down established boundaries between international and external. Many terms the changes for contradictory and compassing tendencies which operate in opposition to each other. Kellner seems to take a transformationist view of globalization. He does not stress on the aspect of integration, rather he focuses on the transformation currently occurring in different spheres of life and the emergence of webs and networks of global relations. He sees globalization as having both negative and positive consequences, and also both homogenizing and hybridizing impact plus emergence of identity based defenses. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for listening.